Welcome back to Hannity and Colmes. I'm Alan Colmes. Does the government have too much say when it comes to how you raise your children? That's what Colorado residents will decide on Election Day when they vote on adding a Parental Rights Amendment to their state constitution. What do you think? Do we need an amendment that says all persons have certain inalienable rights to direct and control the upbringing, education, values, and discipline of their children? In Denver, we have the Democratic governor of Colorado, Roy Romer, and in Washington, D.C. is Greg Erken, executive director of the People. Mr. Erken, your organization Of the People, based in Virginia, just outside of Washington, why are you pouring money into this Colorado amendment, an outside group pouring money to influence a local vote?
Well, Of the People is supporting the Colorado effort because that's the mission of the People, to support parental rights amendments to state constitutions around the country. We've been at work at this for about 3 years, and we've been able to help the amendment advance in a number of states, but Colorado has taken it the furthest thus far, and we're happy to see that the voters of Colorado look poised to enact the amendment for the first time in this country.
Governor, let me jump in. This amendment gives parents an inalienable right to direct, control the upbringing, education, values, discipline of their children. Certainly you wouldn't have a problem with that, would you?
We don't need this amendment. It's unnecessary. It's dangerous. $300,000 has been put up, all of it, but about $1,600 came from out of state. Let me tell you, this is a very dangerous amendment.
Why is it dangerous?
Let me tell you why.
Sure.
Because the state needs to step in when somebody is molesting a child, sexually abusing a child. This amendment may well prevent us from stepping in when we have to. I have a list here of about 100 organizations in Colorado. The district attorneys, the sheriffs, the council of churches, all are saying we don't need this amendment. Let me tell you, if we have a problem in the law of trying to balance the right of a parent, we can take care of it by statute. This is an end run by a right-wing group outside Colorado.
Mr. Erken?
We don't need it.
Mr. Erken, you say that you want parents to have control over their children, that you want less government intervention, yet you want the government here to jump in to have this amendment, so you want to use government when it suits your purposes. You can't have it both ways, can you?
Well, this is not using government here. This is the right of the people traditionally in this country when they feel that a fundamental right, like raising their children at this point in time, when they need to put that in black and white in their state's constitution. This is a limit on government. It leaves people alone. This is a classic populist move, and I think that the governor is, with all due respect, mistaken. This is not dangerous,
Governor,
and you can ask the 83,000 Coloradans that signed the petition what they think of parental rights.
Governor, you said this was dangerous. You said this would help child molesters. All it says is parents have an inalienable right to raise and direct the upbringing of their children. How does this help child molesters, and why should parents be afraid of this?
Because we now have a body of law, statute and case law, that says this is the condition, very limited condition, under which states can intervene to prevent molestation. Now, these words are, it says it has an inalienable right to direct and control. Nobody knows what these words mean. Now, let me say to you, this is not just a position of this governor. One of the most conservative politicians and statesmen in this state, Senator Bill Armstrong, former Senator Bill Armstrong, a very strong conservative, very strong member of the religious right, says this is not the right thing to do. It's an unwise thing to do.
Governor, how do you feel about this foreign money, as it were, coming into your state from organizations that have nothing to do with Colorado?
Well, hey, it's just wrong. You know, you can take nice-sounding words like this, come in and put $300,000 worth of TV on and possibly pass an amendment. I mean, I have 7 children. My wife and I have 7 children, 15 grandchildren. We obviously do not want the state raising our children. But there are times in adoption, in child abuse, and in other circumstances where the state has to step in. We ought not have words that are so general, so misunderstood. We just don't need to do this. If you want to amend Colorado law, come before the legislature, lay your case on the table, and we can debate it.
Governor, I don't see that, but let me jump in here and ask you, does the government have the right to, for example, distribute birth control to children without the permission of parents, allow these 12, 13, 14, 15-year-old kids to get abortions without permission of parents? Teachers can't even give kids aspirin or Tylenol in schools. Ultimately, you're saying the government has the right to raise kids over the parents.
Oh, no, come on, listen carefully. You're just not listening carefully. They do not have that right in Colorado. The government doesn't have that right. Well, I have a statute here in my hand. If you want me to read it, we are very precise about what you can and cannot do in Colorado. We do it by the legislature. That's the body that ought to do it. Let me tell you, I have a Republican legislature in both houses in Colorado. They had this proposition up before them last year. They rejected it. Why is $300,000 of right-wing conservative money from out of state trying to come in and hoodwink Colorado into adopting an amendment that they don't need?
I'll tell you why, Governor. I'll tell you why. Is because, frankly, both parties have missed this entire issue about parents trying to regain their lost responsibilities. Even in your own legislature, as you say, you fought this by a statute. No outside money, as you call it, was fighting for that. And the fact is, you would oppose this amendment if every penny behind the amendment came from Colorado. And I think that the issue is not the outside money. The issue is parental rights. Let me tell you why this is needed. Across the country, we have government-run schools doing things like intrusive psychological testing on children behind their parents' back, condom distribution without parental approval, and in your town of Durango, young middle school children were strip searched for a missing $6, and in Pueblo, the results of one psychological test were used against the girl's father.
Let me interrupt. Let's have some equal time here. Let's have some equal time. You know, let me just say, it's very plain on the face of it. Colorado didn't need this. We didn't want it. All the money is coming from outside except for a very small amount. There are always cases in which somebody is going to abuse the law, and there are ways in which we take care of it.
All right, Governor and Greg, we've got to take a quick break. We'll come back and continue this conversation. We want to know your thoughts as well. Call us at 1-888-TEL-FOX. That's 1-888-835-5369. We'll be right back on Hannity and Colmes.
Thank you for joining us. Welcome back to Hannity and Colmes. I'm Sean Hannity. Should state constitutions and the U.S. Constitution be amended to guarantee parents more rights? In Washington, D.C. is Greg Erken, Executive Director for Of the People. And in Denver, we have the Democratic Governor of Colorado, Roy Romer. Governor, we were going to give you that last sentence you wanted to get in there. We didn't have enough time in the last segment. Go right ahead and finish your thought if you'd like.
Yeah, well, let me just read you two sentences from our laws in Colorado.
Sure.
It says, it is not the duty of the state of Colorado to adopt the parental role when a parent is capable of learning and teaching these behaviors. It is fiscally irresponsible and detrimental to our society as a whole for the state to take on family responsibility when it is not absolutely necessary.
Thank you for making my case, Governor.
Now, let me say, that is the law in Colorado. It's the law by statute. If we adopt by Constitution a provision that says it is the inalienable right of a parent to direct and control, we feel it may take away the ability of the state to step in when it is absolutely necessary, such as an abuse or an adoption.
Governor,
now, let me just say, we have good laws here. We didn't have a problem. We don't need to have this outside money to try to come and convince us of this. This is simply a cause of the religious right. Misdirected.
You want to jump in?
Governor,
if this man Erken believes in it so much, do it in Virginia, Mr. Erken. Leave us alone in Colorado. We don't need your money. We don't need to have you tell us what to do.
Mr. Erken, isn't it very possible that good parents don't need an amendment to tell them how to be parents, and bad parents could easily abuse this?
Yes, good parents, in fact, do need more help from the law.
They need more government, right?
Those are good parents that tried to stop the schools from, say, psychologically testing their children. Those are good, responsible parents. But what the governor wants is the bureaucracy to throw so many hurdles in front of responsible parenthood that it's in essence saying, oh, just take a number. We ought to have in the highest law of the land an affirmative statement of basic principle that it's parents, not government, that raise children.
Because we're so short on time, let me ask you, and I think a lot of parents are concerned. For example, there are a couple of parents in Georgia that were upset at the fact that their 14 and 15-year-old daughters were taken to birth control clinics, given birth control without the knowledge given to parents, and this is why parents feel this type of amendment is necessary. How do you address the concerns of these parents?
Look, there are many remedies to that kind of a situation beside amending the Constitution. Let me just say to you, for those of you who are watching this program, it ought to be very obvious to somebody, if you have $300,000 of money coming in from the religious right out of the state
Governor,
to try to do this, there's an exterior purpose here, and we ought not be fooled by it. Colorado doesn't need
Governor,
this. We don't want it.
I've got to stop you this segment.
The most conservative member of our political establishment.
Also, we'll be taking your telephone calls as we continue on Hannity and Colmes. We'll let the governor finish when we come back. Stay tuned.
Welcome back to Hannity and Colmes. I'm Alan Colmes. We're talking about Colorado's Amendment 17. With us is Greg Erken. He is with Of the People in Washington, D.C., and the Democratic Governor of Colorado, Roy Romer. Governor Romer, really want to give you an opportunity here to respond. I'm sorry you were cut off before. We'd love to hear what you have to say.
Well, I finished my comment, I believe. I was ready to turn to phone calls.
Oh, okay.
All right, let's do that then. Let's go to...
Dave is in Colorado. Speaking of Colorado, Dave, you're on Fox News, Hannity and Colmes. We're glad you called.
Hi, I'd like to say that I can agree completely with Roy. I'm a native of Colorado, and I don't like these East Coast fundamentalists putting all this money to try to get us to pass a law we don't need. If you think it's such a good idea, do it in Virginia. All it's going to do is allow the fundamentalist Christians to get their superstitions taught in school.
Hey, Dave, the polls out there show that this is going to pass by a fairly large margin.
As a matter of fact, all the polls, independent and private, show the amendment supported by about rates of 2 to 1 or better. And why is that? It's because it's common sense. And the governor, with his parade of horribles as to what might happen if the amendment passes, is really making my case. Of course the state has a duty to step in abusive situations and so forth. What we're talking about is cases on the margins where the state tramples on the rights of parents. Parents need protection for the government. And as far as a fundamentalist, I appreciate the comments of Dave from Colorado, but I would say the amendment says the right of parents. It doesn't say Christian parents or conservative parents.
Greg, is there a religious agenda at work here? Is that part of what's going on here?
A religious agenda?
Yeah.
I don't think so. I think this is a common sense agenda. All it does is put into the Constitution the sentiment expressed by that statute that the governor read, that number one, parents raise children, and it is not the duty of the state.
Can I get a word in here?
To raise
Get a
kids.
word in here.
Go right ahead.
Let me tell you that the polls are about 50 to 30 on it. They're in favor of it, and I'll tell you why. The words are syruply sweet. But let me ask you, why do the following organizations in Colorado unanimously oppose it? The Sheriff's Association, the District Attorney, the Council of Churches, the League of Women Voters. Why do all these people oppose this? It's because they know that people do not understand the impact of these words.
Right.
All right, let's go to Mike in Oregon. Mike, welcome to Fox News. You're on.
Yeah, hi. The reason why it needs to be an inalienable right is because that brings up constitutional protections, and when it comes to social service agencies, parents do not have any constitutional protections when going into the initial threats to take away your children. There's no due process. They don't have to prove anything. They can go on innuendo, and if you don't cooperate, your children are gone before you even know what's happening.
Governor Romer, I'd like to have you respond to that.
Yeah, that's not true in Colorado. You do have constitutional protection, and in Colorado we have very rigid ways to check our social agencies. And let me say, we do not have a problem in this state, and it is really, really dangerous for us to put this in the courts. For the next 10 years, courts will be giving interpretations of this, and it's the wrong way to make social policy.
May I respond?
I know
If there's no,
they don't want it in the courts.
If there's no problem in Colorado, how come we had no trouble getting over 83,000 signatures of people who read these 17 words and said, yeah, I agree with that, and that ought to be on the ballot, and now they're prepared to vote for it at a rate of 2 to 1. If there's no problem, why are we not running into more opposition?
Well, Greg Erken, you haven't responded to what the governor said when he said it's opposed by the Council of Churches, the prosecutors, the sheriffs.
Let me tell you what all of the groups in opposition have in common, and that is, number one, I really don't think that they've polled their membership. I would turn the question around and say, how come so many of these elite groups are so out of touch with the opinions
Greg,
of the people?
It's also
That's
interesting.
a serious problem in this
Some
country.
of the main supporters are the NEA, the ACLU, the Abortion Rights League, AIDS Advocacy Project out in Colorado. It seems like a very left-wing agenda that's opposing this, right?
Well,
let me say,
you've read off my favorites. It's a combination of left-wing groups and, quote, mainstream groups that are unfortunately out of touch with the opinions of the
Governor
people.
Romer,
This is not a left-right
please
fight.
respond to
This is
these charges, Governor. Let's hear your response to this.
Yeah, let me tell you, Mr. Erken really makes very irresponsible, untruthful statements. He doesn't know who I'm referring to here, and he characterizes them this way. It's a tradition of theirs, and I tell you, this is like selling snake oil. People are not going to buy this finally when they understand it. And Mr. Erken and his $300,000 of foreign money are trying to sell that to Colorado. 80,000 people signed a petition because any person, when he looked at those words, would say, yeah, it sounds reasonable, but they have not been looking at the existing body of law law. They do not know how this might affect it in Colorado.
All right, we just have
and it's just simply something we ought to avoid here.
Unfortunately, the governor portrays in the attitude of saying about the voters in his own state that they were somehow fooled into signing these petitions because they can't read the simple language and understand what it means. It's part of the same mentality, why this is needed, that says parents aren't competent to raise their own children, and we need this list of elite institutions to tell them how to be parents. It's one and the same mentality. Voters can read
All right,
this,
we're really short on time here. We just have a moment left. Greg Erken, please give us 10 seconds, your final thoughts.
Well, let me tell you, Colorado is going to pass a resounding victory. Not only will the amendment help in specific cases where parents have had their children harmed by government bureaucracies, but it's going to take a big step toward making the public schools more accountable to parents in general. It's
okay, Governor Romer, your final thoughts on this, please.
Let me quote the most conservative statesman in this state, former Senator Bill Armstrong, a member of the religious right. He says, we don't need this in Colorado. I would add, I think it's dangerous. We ought to be left alone by people in Virginia with $300,000. Let Colorado do their own thing.
Governor Romer, Greg Erken, thank you both very much. When we come back on Hannity and Colmes, it's time for video.